We've all heard allegations of voter fraud, of rigged elections. How are we protected from such things? I'm Dan Ringer, and I'll talk with West Virginia Secretary of State Natalie Tennant right now on The Law Works.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
Overseeing elections is one of the highest functions of state government. The person who leads that effort in West Virginia is my guest, Secretary of State Natalie Tennant. Madam Secretary, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
I would say welcome back because you're from public television in the earliest days.
That's right. I had earned a journalism degree from WVU. My first internship was here at Public TV, and I learned a lot of different aspects of it and had the opportunity to edit and just learn behind the scenes aspect of things.
Well, why don't I just let you take over then?
Okay, well, today we're going to talk about elections, and take my camera right here. I know we're on the two shot, but we'll take this camera
Wait a minute.
Dan Ringer is our guest today, and welcome to Law Works. Don't ever give me an open mic. You would think that you would learn that one.
In addition to doing an internship with public television, she was also in commercial broadcasting for a very long time before she decided to run for the office of Secretary of State.
Yes.
Are you enjoying that as much as you enjoyed broadcasting?
I love it. Yes, I do. And I ran for Secretary of State twice, so I bet I should love it. If I didn't make it the first time, I tried it again. And I do. And I do incorporate a lot of what I did as a journalist. And I still feel like a journalist in some aspects because it's information that we need to get out. And I just believe that government doesn't have to be dry and boring. It can be open and engaging. And that's what I can bring to it as a being in office about 16 or 17 months. That's the aspect that I can bring to state government, is the experience that I have in that area.
Well, you're in a sense reporting to the people about what's going on within your office.
Correct.
And as we described it in coming into this show, one of the most important functions of the Secretary of State's office is the overseeing of the election process.
Right.
Explain to us what
well,
you do.
and that's a good aspect, because the Secretary of State's office, the Secretary of State is considered the chief election officer. And when you say overseeing the election process, because while we're statewide, it's the county clerks and county officials within the counties who are the chief elections officers within the counties, and those are the ones who are on the front line. So we work hand in hand to make sure the elections are conducted properly, conducted openly, and conducted fairly. And that's how we are given that title.
The election process has changed a lot in just the last few years.
It has, and it's a lot of folks will look at 2000. Florida, that's all you have to say, is Florida, is part of that reason. And I also think that it's changing because we are seeing how technology is influencing things that we do in everyday life. And in 2000, we had the Florida with the recounts and the hanging chads and the dimple chads and all of those. And so that meant in 2002, the Help America Vote Act was passed, HAVA or HAVA, depending on how you want to pronounce it. It was passed by Congress in 2002, and what that did was you had those punch card systems that folks used, and they used them in various places all over the state. Kanawha County used it, that you could no longer use those. You couldn't use the lever system, and so you had the opportunity to use the electronic touchscreen machines that 33 counties in West Virginia have, or the optical scan where you color it in like you would a standardized test, or there are 2 counties that also use paper ballots in addition with what else is required. Braxton and Wyoming counties use paper ballots.
So still in 2010, we're using paper ballots in some counties?
Right, but what they also do, because of the HAVA Act of 2002, you also have to, it has to be ADA compliant, and help with, and people with disabilities need to be able to vote themselves. And
ADA
so,
is the Americans with
Disabilities Act. I'm sorry, of '94, I think it was. What that means is those machines, those people with disabilities need to be able to vote themselves in terms of, say, a person is blind. So because of HAVA and because of electronic voting machines, these folks can now go in and they have a headset on and they're taken through and they vote themselves. I have a cousin who was blind, and she said it's just amazing. It's the first time I've ever had the opportunity to vote by myself, to have that privacy without having someone come in and saying, okay, running for senator is so-and-so, who do you want to vote for? She can do it herself now.
Yeah, I always thought in the past that having a visual handicap and having to have someone with you was almost demeaning, because it was as though you didn't know what you were doing, and of course that's not true. But now, the last time I voted, I was taken to a very nice electronic machine with a touch screen. One of the poll workers came over and gave me a very nice introduction to how this thing worked. The touch screen actually worked. I've always been very dubious about touch screens because they don't seem to work. But as Mike Myers used to say on Saturday Night Live, it was smooth as butter. It was really a good experience. I took my wife with me. I came out. I said, "What'd you think of that process?" And she said, "That was wonderful." The deputy clerks were very helpful. They had computers all over the room. They were tied together, linked apparently statewide.
Well, and that's what they, those are just some of the progression and the function that you're seeing within the Secretary of State's office that we're helping the counties to push forward as well. And you vote in Monongalia County.
I do,
so you're talking about the iVotronics, which are touchscreen. And because you did early voting at the time, they are also testing what are called e-poll books. Now, a poll book, you think an e-poll book, I first thought, oh, this is a Kindle. I know I'm getting way far ahead, but we're going to be using Kindles a lot more.
Is an electronic tablet that it looks like a book when you look at it, and you can change the pages, but you can't fold them over.
And it scrolls down, and you can make the font bigger if you want it.
Yeah.
And so, electronic poll book is basically a computer screen, and it could be a laptop even. But the reason that the electronic is, I want to say in the olden days, we're still in the olden days a little bit, but just think, probably in a couple more elections we're going to say in the olden days, because we're the big poll books that you have that are printed off by each county, and they're laid out like this, and they say Dan Ringer, and you live at 123 Main Street, yes I do, you lean over and you sign it. Well, what the electronic poll book is, presuming that you had to sign on an electronic form type.
Yes, and in the last election I voted in, I signed looked like I was charging something on a charge card.
Right, it is. I mean, we're used to signing in that manner. So an electronic poll book allows the poll worker to record you there without having this big cost of printing. The county didn't have to print for that specific precinct, the huge poll book. You were able to vote quickly and easily, and it gave you credit for voting. And what it did later on, this is real inside elections, because for the poll workers or for the folks, the deputy clerks in the county clerk's office, they will not have to go back and scan in like you would have had done with a paper poll book. Does that make sense? It already credited you.
So it's all put in at least the local computer as you do it.
Right.
And then in some cases,
at the end of the day, it's put into the statewide SVR, a statewide voter registration system.
Okay. I got the impression in that election they were testing out a new system where maybe the statewide numbers were being counted at the same time. That if I had tried to go to the next county and vote in one of their polls, I would be caught if I did that.
Right. Well, you'd have to one be registered in that county, but what they may have been, well, that's what the statewide voter registration, and for Monongalia County that is the case. Because we have another new aspect also that
Something
takes
else
place.
New?
Oh yeah, we're not done.
I'm getting dizzy.
We're not finished, because in some counties, Jackson County and Monroe County, actually all the counties in West Virginia, have the opportunity to have what's called satellite voting. When you talk about early voting, it took place and it does take place in the county seat, in the county courthouse, or an area
that has been
designated. Yes, in an area designated, because Monongalia County is a little bit different because they needed the extra space. They moved to another location. But So you have it at the county seat, the town of the county seat, where the courthouse is. But in Monroe and Jackson counties, they use the satellite voting option, where they could also have it in another populated area of their county.
That's wonderful.
Right. And so what they were doing is making sure that someone didn't go to Ravenswood to vote in a satellite area and then come down to Ripley and vote. And that's why it has to be credited right away.
So if you're in Randolph County or Pocahontas County or these huge geographically counties, they're going to be able to have early voting away from the county seat.
Right. That was an option that was passed in the 2009 legislative session, and it gave permissive language. And what that means, the permissive language, is that the state law didn't dictate that the counties had to have it. If they could do it, they could have it. And one of the reasons might be, do they have the funding to do it?
Right.
Because you have to have poll workers at that location for those 15 days of early voting. Or did they have the people to do it, the monetary funding, the people to do it, the security, the secure place that they could have it? And satellite voting requires 4 different entities to agree. The county clerk comes up with some of the places they want to have it. The county commission has to agree on that. The chairperson of the Democratic Party in that county and the chairperson of the Republican Party have to agree on that. Because what that does, it provides neutrality for those parties and security for the voting.
So there has to be a consensus of
yes.
all the people
yes.
who are directly involved
And I just
in
think that that's a wonderful opportunity for good government, for cooperative government.
You'd like to think that's the way government
works. Well, I know.
Works,
well, see, and I still, you know, I use my glasses for, to see, but they're also my rose-colored glasses at the same time because I have those ideas.
Be very careful about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do. I think like that. I think idealistically sometimes, and sometimes I'm brought back into reality, but sometimes it's like, why not? Why can't we try that? And so I'm always going to have that approach. Well, what if we tried something like this? And then, you know, what's the worst can happen? No, we can't do it.
Well, electronic voting, which we're using so much now, has not been error-free in its history.
That's right. Has any voting system been error-free?
Not that I've participated in. The wrong person seems to win too often.
And I don't mean to say that flippantly, because as the chief elections officer, I take it very seriously. And so what that means is that communication between the county officials and the state officials, but also with the voters as well. And it takes training. It takes training of the poll workers, because you felt very comfortable with those poll workers when you went and voted, and that they knew what they were doing and talking about. So it takes that extra training. It takes tough election laws from the state of West Virginia that require us to have the paper ballot while you voted electronically.
There's a tape that prints
That's
out
right.
at the same time.
It looks like a cash register, and then that becomes your responsibility. The election officials have done their job. Now it's the voters' responsibility. I pushed candidate A. Did candidate A show up over here? We all have a responsibility in this, and that's why you say no system is foolproof. Well, we all make it as solid as we can by working together.
One of the things that I liked when I went in to vote was there was someone there to explain every step of the process. Not someone to stand there and watch me cast my ballot. That would be improper. But the poll worker took me to the machine and then, in a sense, treated me like I didn't know anything. She had a very thorough explanation as to how the machine was going to work, what I was going to see as I went through the process, how I would review, change, and I had the opportunity to review and change anything. Which I felt very comfortable with that. Sometimes you remember something or you change your mind while you're voting. Right. So there is no reason to be nervous about going to vote if you're voting electronically. Some people are technophobes and they just can't deal with that.
And it's not just the electronic machines. I mean, think about how many times you vote. You vote twice every 2 years. If you're a good historical voter, you vote twice every 2 years. It's still an intimidating process. So that means it's been a couple years since you've gone and voted, and you think, oh, what am I supposed to do? And we think, well, we're doing a good civic duty. We're promoting democracy here by voting. And then we walk in and we think, I can't remember what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to know. I mean, I still get intimidated. Well, yes, the Secretary of State, because you want to make sure that you're doing everything by the book.
Well, the poll worker asked me, he said, okay, what precinct are you in? And I said, I have no idea.
Exactly. And then some counties have consolidated some. So am I in 408 or 409? Well, I used to be in 409. There is no 409 anymore, so I must be 408.
That's right. And I frankly, in that occasion, I said, well, you've got a slip of paper there that tells me what I'm allowed to vote on. What is the number on that? And she told me. And it turned out that those were the people that I was anticipating seeing, so that worked out very well. But I liked the process start to finish. However, didn't they used to call this absentee voting, this early voting stuff that we're doing?
Well, this is called early, you're going to make me say absentee, early voting, no excuse early voting in person.
That's kind of a long title.
I know, and I've really messed it up. Now, it's no excuse early, in-person early voting. That's what it is. It's no excuse in-person early voting.
Okay, the election I was participating in last was the primary election.
Right.
Now we're going to have the general election coming up in the fall. But I thought you say, I'm not going to be in town, they give you a ballot, you fill it out, you mail it back, and they count it along with the other.
Now that's for absentee voting. That is, you have to have an excuse. That's when you have to apply, and this is the difference between the two. If you're a shut-in, if you just can't get out to the polls, if you're a college student, I remember voting absentee when I went to school at WVU. So you apply and you say, I will not be here on election day to vote because of this reason. Then you send it to the county clerk as an application, and the county clerk approves or disapproves of whether or not you'll be there if it's a good excuse. And then two folks in that office have to sign off of it, one person a Republican and one person a Democrat. And then that ballot is sent back to you. Then you mail it back, you fill it out, you mail it back. And in some cases, folks will hand deliver it. But this is what's interesting about part of our state code. You can only hand deliver 2 ballots per election. Like, you couldn't go collect mine and go collect Aunt Mary's and Aunt Sue's and Uncle John's and then come and bring them.
So is that 1 ballot in each election or 2 ballots in each?
2 ballots in each election.
So my wife could take my ballot in for me?
Correct.
Or she could take our son's ballot in or something like that.
But she couldn't take all 3. And then that's why you would mail it in, and the clerk is responsible for the mailing. I
would think then that the number of absentee ballots being cast because of this in-person, no excuse early voting, I think I got that right, would cut down on the number of absentee ballots that had to be requested and sent out.
Right.
At least in theory.
Yes. And the unfortunate, people love the usage of in-person early voting. Let's just call it early voting. Early voting in person. The usage has gone up. It started in 2002, the primary of 2002, and the usage has gone up. Unfortunately, the numbers, while more people are voting early, it hasn't brought as many people out. And that's really unfortunate, because we make these, we come up with new ways for folks to vote in hopes of increasing voter turnout, and sometimes that doesn't do it.
Folks in Iraq, to vote, they vote for, I think, a 2-week period. They have to generally travel to the polls, which often means walking miles and miles. They get their finger dipped in purple to show that they voted, and at each step on the way to the polls, they risk being shot. Driving across town or into the county seat or to the poll,
or even on election day, going to your own precinct,
just doesn't seem like that big of a burden.
I know. Well, and that's what's disheartening to me, and those are some of the reasons why I try to have an open and engaging government, a government where folks can feel more a part of it. So we've done webcasts. We have a website that has information about what I may be doing or what just may be happening at the state capitol, not necessarily anything about the Secretary of State's office, but what may be happening also. And you talked about well-trained poll workers. What we even did to show that it's not as intimidating a process, or it's not a burden to be a poll worker, we've even put the training videos on our website. So we are trying every aspect to show folks, get involved. This is what happens. You're not going to be intimidated, or you're not going to be made fun of if you come out and participate in the process. Because then, think about what happens later on. Then you have the opportunity to complain. But if you didn't do anything, you cannot complain.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the last Secretary of State's race. And if I didn't vote,
that's right.
I have you can't voice your opinion afterwards because you missed your opportunity.
Right.
Many years ago, I think Rutherford B. Hayes was running for president. I was out of the state, in the service, and I wanted to vote. And I had to
When did he run for office?
It's been a couple of years back.
Okay.
Actually, probably not that
you're
far
getting
back.
hypothetical.
But I had to get an absentee ballot, and I had it mailed to my home at the base where I was stationed, and I filled it out and I mailed it back, and everything worked fine. But there were lots of concerns in those days if the young person was in Vietnam, or now if they're in Afghanistan or in Iraq or Germany, wherever they may happen to be stationed. There has been the problem of making sure that that ballot got back in time to be counted, and sometimes, in some locations, it's just impossible to get it back in time. There are some new programs testing to address that.
Right. And we are proud to say that West Virginia is leading the way on that, because what takes place, there was actually a MOVE Act, Military and Overseas Voter Empowerment Act, that was passed in October of 2009, and it addresses that you have to have some way to electronically get a ballot to a military member or an overseas voter. Well, West Virginia, we already met those requirements, because you can either fax or email, and you have also the traditional mail, and those military members had the opportunity to choose from those three options. So think about faxing and emailing. What happens there? You give up your privacy when you sign off and say, yes, I know that you're going to be able to see my ballot, but that's okay. I want to make sure it gets there. And then traditional mail sometimes comes too late, or sometimes they may have to pay $50 up to $200 to make sure that it gets there if they want to get it FedEx to get back to be voted on time. And so what West Virginia has done, and Monongalia County Clerk has, she wanted to do secure electronic voting, which is called internet voting also, for military and overseas voters. So she was leading the way, and then we knew that this federal law was coming into play, so we went into the legislature went into special session. We knew that, and we said, let's get a bill passed where we can allow it within our state code to be able to do a pilot project to allow internet voting for military and overseas voters. We had 5 counties step up to the plate: Monongalia, Marshall, Wood, Jackson, and Kanawha counties.
You got all 5.
So we had 5 counties. All 55 could have stepped up. So, but 5 of them chose to do that. And as we continue to evaluate how it went, we've gotten great reviews from folks who used it. Folks in the other parts of the country are looking at us, California, Georgia. I had the opportunity to go to Munich at an Overseas Vote Foundation conference, and they were looking at us, and they kept saying, Natalie, can you please come? Can you please come? Well, why would you want us to come? Little old Natalie from little old West Virginia, because we are leading the way in that. No one else had the courage enough. And you have to credit the county clerks in those 5 counties, the legislature for passing that pilot and allowing us to happen, and for the Secretary of State's office for pushing it forward and saying, yes, we can try it. We will work together, and we will do this. So we're getting our report together for after the primary. We'll present that to the legislature, and then these 5 counties will have the opportunity to do it again in the general election.
It seems like it would take a tremendous leap of faith to adopt such a radically new technology. Now, admittedly, the internet is not a radically new technology as we sit here in 2010, but voting over the internet, when we hear about all the weird things that go on the internet, it's impressive that you're able to satisfy yourself that this will work and not be hacked.
Well, we use the same encryption methods that the military uses. I mean, think about what for folks who are familiar with the military, they have a common access card, a CAC card, where much of their information is on that. Their health record, their own personal record too. And they're the ones who are willing to say, okay, because they may have had, if they were faxing or emailing, they may have had to give up their privacy anyway. So this was the opportunity for them to try it. And we've received a lot of positive responses from them too. And this is just a way for us to try something. That's great about pilot projects, that succeed. If there are pitfalls that we can't overcome, then maybe we don't continue it. But if it succeeds, look at how we're going to build. We just have a minute or so left. What are you looking forward to? What do you think you can do with your office that hasn't been done yet? We're trying everything. Well, we just continue to take on those challenges of new ideas, whether it's satellite voting or the pilot project of military and overseas voters or e-poll books. That's in the terms of elections. We didn't even have the opportunity to talk about what takes place in our business and licensing division when someone's incorporated or a limited liability company, charities, notaries.
Good segue, because that's how I wanted to end this. The Secretary of State's office has got to be one of the busiest of the state offices. I know there are other offices, the Attorney General, the Auditor, the Governor.
We do more work than anybody else combined.
But you've got fingers in more pies.
Well, we do, because it does. Folks first think of elections because it's so visible. But business and licensing, we are helping those small business owners. We are changing people's lives and helping them.
Will you come back and we'll talk about some of these things?
I would love to do that, because that's the progression that the answer to your question is showing what we do in business and licensing too.
Okay. Secretary of State, the Honorable Natalie Tennant. Natalie, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you also for being with us. On behalf of the LawWorks, I'm Dan Ringer. Good evening. On the LawWorks webpage at thelawworks.org, you'll find a listing of recent The LawWorks show topics and additional information about this show's topic. If you would like to recommend this program to a friend, you'll find video of this program at thelawworks.org, and you can find previous programs on YouTube. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future The LawWorks show, or if you're a school teacher and would like to receive a copy of this program for classroom use, please send us an email to thelawworks@comcast.net.
The LawWorks is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia State Bar, the Mountain State Bar, and the West Virginia University College of Law. The LawWorks is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.